We're going to discuss the whole concept that we used from a standpoint of understanding when we built our businesses from scratch.
Most entrepreneurs need to understand when they're transitioning, they need to be able to identify what are they really good at.
You're not always going to be successful in everything you try in business ownership and entrepreneurship. What you do need to be is a student to learn from those mistakes and understand. And really, they're not mistakes. They're just learning opportunities that will save you money in the long run.
When you become an entrepreneur, you have to invest in your growth.
Welcome to the Trustedpreneur Show, where we have great conversations and dive deep into entrepreneurship, business ownership, personal development, and leadership. I'm David Ritchie.
And I am Madeline Ritchie.
Madeline, I am so excited to have this next sequence of shows and episodes for our audience. Guys, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a number of episodes, as I just said, to talk about a little bit of our journey on how we make business decisions and how we moved from corporate to entrepreneurship and business ownership. And why I'm so excited about having this conversation is I think that it's the one question that we get asked all the time is, how did you do it? What was your mindset? And then as we're building onto these episodes, we're going to discuss the whole concept that we used from a standpoint of understanding when we built our businesses from scratch, or when we decided to look at franchise options. And then once we did make those decisions, what were some of the next steps and what were important for us? So Madeline, you were the leader for us on getting us to move to being owners of a business and entrepreneurship. And what was so interesting back then is I think about so many of our audience were just like we were. Mm-hmm. We were working in corporate. We were getting frustrated with the layoffs in the industry. We were getting frustrated with working for someone else and not really maximizing our opportunities for us as individuals. And one of the most important things that we thought we were looking for was freedom. And I say that in a different definition of the word because, as you know, when we started our business, we were working a lot. However, it ultimately afforded us a different type of freedom back then and clearly now. So since you were in the forefront for us, can you kind of walk our audience through kind of where you were and then how did you change your perspective on how you were going to attack it?
Well, for starters, I'm going to address something that you said. Yes, we wanted all that. However, we had a really good income coming in. We were comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't a choice. So it was kind of hard to make that transition at that time because most entrepreneurs, what they do is they look for that nod. Should I make that transition? Mm-hmm. Right? And so I was pushed to make the transition at the time, back in 2008 when we first started our first business. However, like we've said in other episodes, I had dabbled a lot into different things and finding out what was it that I really wanted to do. And so when 2008 came around, I had a year prior gone incognito kind of thing, and moonlighting into what I thought it was a problem that I saw in the industry that we were in, which was closings, right? And so I had established a few clients just to kind of test the market and see what was the receptivity of that. And so it did kind of worked out for us in 2008 when I got laid off, right? And I got my severance. I did have the opportunity to go back to corporate and find another job within the corporation. And after 18 years, it could have been, what most people would have done, but I didn't.
So that's a mindset shift.
It was a mindset shift. It was an opportunity, actually, for me. Mm-hmm. It was an opportunity to just really create that freedom that I was looking for, right? But again, you had your job and you were making great money. So there was no need for my income right then and there, but I'm very independent, right? So I always wanted to get that to at least replace the income that I was making. And so I did when the time came. I never looked back. That's the one thing I never did. And most people, what they do is look back and regret sometimes the decision of the leap of faith that most take, right?
Right. So, you kind of jumped a little bit to kind of some of our process on how we did that. But where I wanted to, and you also said something that I really liked, and it's important, right? Because there are a lot of people that were in corporate that they say they want to work for themselves. They don't want to work for somebody else, but really don't actually have an idea of what that idea they want to do is. And one of the things that we tell clients now is, you see business opportunities every day. And every day when you see those business opportunities, they usually come in a form of a problem.
Yes.
And when you see a problem, you either you can do one of a couple of things. Most people complain, get frustrated, or if you're really looking at the problem and you create what I call is the awareness to generate a solution. And if that solution makes sense, and that's why I loved what you were saying, because you actually kind of went through the process of identifying a problem, creating a solution. It is not that the solution did not exist. It is how we delivered the solution that changed it. So that's a big difference. And so people were willing, because then you went through a validation process, right? Of finding out, well, will they pay more for me to manage it for them? And once you did that, and then they said, we'll give it a shot, and it worked, you created the validation you needed. And then once that validation was done, now it was full on board.
It was full on board.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to me, I love that. But prior to that, yes, not everybody has the second income that's coming in that's doing well. Even if you didn't, you came up with what I call a comfort number. And I remember you saying this: all I want to do is replace my income.
Yes.
Right. And it wasn't a bad income. It was a very good income.
Yeah.
However, because of the quote unquote moonlighting, you had already gotten 50% of the way there. So we were looking for a business model that would take us the next 50%. And what we found out is that it existed, that it wasn't that many transactions in our business, right? And so that's what people have to do, is you don't have to spend a lot of money to validate an idea. And once you validate it, and if you're actually shooting for, you should have a couple of numbers. Certainly we all want the $1 million business, right? We all do, but it doesn't have to be. And it's funny because we were talking to a client just the other day, and their revenues are already $50,000 a month in less than 2 years.
That's amazing.
It is amazing, but now they want to take it to their comfort level, and now became 80,000.
Right.
Right. And I think it's important. That's the mind shift I remember that made us get past the self-doubt. Can we do this? Because the comfort number can always change based on life. But what it needs to do is it has to start out as it's realistic. And then once you do that, then it moves on.
Yeah. That validation process that you just talked about, I think is important. That gives you the confidence level to really get to the next level. Right. And so, when we moved to that business, luckily for us, which it was really unusual. This is not something that is always what happens, but for us, because I was already 50% of my income moonlighting, and I already knew the business so well, that was my zone of genius, right? And that's another thing that people, most entrepreneurs need to understand when they're transitioning. They need to be able to identify what are they really good at.
Great point. And I want to spend some time on that, right? Because to me, you see people say, oh, they see something that's going on and it's like, oh, that's cool. You know, I think the number one is I'm going to open up a bar, right? Or I'm going to open up a restaurant.
Yeah.
Well, are you a chef? Are you really good at this, right? Or should you be finding something? And I think you're absolutely right, is the best businesses, in my opinion, and I'd love for you to take this to the next level for us, is one, to your point, it's within your zone of genius. Mm-hmm. Second, you actually can see yourself doing it every day. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people say, I'm going to open up a business. I'm just going to hire a bunch of people. What happens if those people leave? Or when you're starting,
yes,
right? It's you. Mm-hmm. You may have a small team. You know, I think in our business, we hired a part-timer, right?
Well, it was a retiree, remember?
Yeah. Well, yes. Yes, it was.
Yes.
And,
but he was a great influence, and he helped us be on the map because of his connections.
Absolutely. However, where I was going is that you really enjoyed what you were doing.
I did.
You enjoyed working not only with our clients, but their clients, mm-hmm. and then our contractors, right? So to me, that's the real big brainstorming thing. It's not always you have to go out and find something so unique that you've never done before, but oh, it looks cool.
Yeah. Well, you know, and it was unique because it was not in the market for a long time, right? I mean, I think that when we came into market, it was 5 years in, that kind of concept. Now, what we did, we refined that, and that's because a lot of people got into that business based on how much money they can make, and you could make a lot of money if you do it well, but you got to work. And there's a process for that, right? There's a process for everything. And so when we got into the market, it was 5 years into it, but then we got that shift where the industry crashed, and we got in it when everybody was getting out, which it was even more interesting, right? I mean, talk about ignorance being bliss. And we got in it, but we understood processes. We understood our client. We understood what was missing, right? And like you said, I enjoyed at the time, which it was only me and another person, I enjoy working with the customer. And I think my greatest satisfaction in that was the outcome of that transaction, seeing that client closing on their house, right? Their refinancing is going through, and the satisfaction and the thank yous for mm-hmm. making that seamless. And that fed my soul in such a manner that I want to give that more of that, right? I wanted to give more of that. And I think that opened my eyes to see what was all possible. And I don't want to take it down another path, because I think that that's just how I operate, and that's why we did so well and we made money right away. But then the other contrasts, opening another business from scratch that didn't make money right away.
You are so on point, and we didn't practice this. That was the next thing I was going to bring up, is that the second business, even though I think we did an adequate job of our due diligence, I don't think we did exceptional on that one. However, the idea, the concept was there. There's so many paths at that story that it's an episode in and of itself.
I know. And
we'll just call that the $500,000 I don't want to think about it anymore episode. But
but it's so true.
But what was interesting about that is the one thing that was uniquely different is, one, you did not actually see yourself doing that business by yourself.
Right, which is to your point, what you said before, hire a bunch of people and let it do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a passion of mine. It was a passion project.
Well,
right. I
right.
was an enthusiast.
Yes.
Right. Relying on the supposedly experts. That was a learning lesson for sure.
Yeah, and guys, I want to tell you, this is a really challenging conversation for me, for a number of reasons. But the reason why it was so difficult was, first of all, the space is a hard space to be a startup, and this is where, when not to segue into another episode, when we looked at a franchise concept and we compared, and I believe we made the right decision in one aspect, because what you were looking to do was more in line with where you are today, versus and with the vehicle that you're using, and we were using the wrong vehicle to deliver the message. Now, the message was delivered extremely well, and there's such great fandom of that business, but it's the point that we did see a problem. We saw an issue. We created a solution.
And we weren't that far off.
We weren't. And so that part's all good. However, it didn't start the way. And then because your passion wasn't the actual business, it was the result that was coming out of the business and what you were working with our clients. And this is why, guys, I say, you need to always make sure you see yourself initially working the business. And I know that that's what people always think, is that, I'm going to be business for myself. I'm never going to have to be in the business. Well, I don't care what business there is. There is no such thing as semi-absentee owners. You are the owner. You are the person that created the idea.
Yeah.
You are the person that's driving it. You have to be involved. And I think that was the one thing that happened. And what was really interesting in that process, though, is you did find the space that you liked to do in that business. And when you were involved in it, it was amazing. What was the transition that made it difficult was that you couldn't get others to do it like you.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? When you hire people, and this goes a little bit into leadership, and I'm going to be very vulnerable here at this moment. I don't think I was, it's going to be hard, as good of a leader as I should have been, right? I didn't see through their eyes, right, what I needed to convey, the mission that I was on. I communicated it, but not with the passion and vision that I had for myself. I kept that for me, right, for myself, instead of sharing it and helping them understand and guide them. I did it in another way, but it wasn't what they needed, right? So it made it very difficult for me, because I know that you're never going to hire somebody that's going to care for your business more than you do. There's just nobody out there, right? There will be some people that love it so much and they care for their integrity and and who they are as an individual, but not from a business standpoint, right? So, but I'll take full responsibility for the screw up, if you will, right? For the $500,000 screw up. But it taught me a lot. It changed me. Yeah. Right? It changed me. It changed the way I lead today. I don't ever want anybody to please spend $500,000 making it such a big mistake and learn their leadership, lack of leadership that way, because there's better ways to do that. But for me, that's what transformed me in my leadership, the way I view things, the way I listen to people, the way I acknowledge, right, and what they need, and be able to lead with emotional intelligence, with an understanding that when I was in corporate, that was the way I was led. So I thought that was the best way, right? So that's What you teach your people, how you lead them, they will lead. So that's why I've made it a mission to my legacy, what I want to leave behind. And this is very emotional for me, is the legacy is to lead others so they can lead others with the vision.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So-
I know in a hard discussion,
It
not
is.
because it's a hard topic, it's just, it touches emotionally, right, for us. And I think we, and this is the other thing when you're looking at going in from corporate to entrepreneurship or business ownership. While I would love to tell you that everything that we touched was a success, it wasn't. We have another story where we tried to launch something, and this was in a story that we'll tell a little bit in another episode, but we just made a bad decision. Mm-hmm. However, we recognized it very quick, which was a good thing. But my point that I'm trying to make is that you're not always going to be successful in everything you try in business ownership and entrepreneurship. What you do need to be is be a student to learn from those mistakes and understand. And really, they're not mistakes. They're just learning opportunities that will save you money in the long run, that will provide you an opportunity to grow. And as we made a few mistakes and we've got some really good successes under our belt as well, that is why, in my opinion, just as you said, this is what your legacy is. My legacy is I want to help people just like you not make the mistake or provide you enough information so that you can avoid as many of those landmines as you can.
Yeah.
So, another thing I want to talk about, the transition from corporate to entrepreneurship and business ownership, is when it's working, it's great. But understanding that when you're an entrepreneur or you're owning your own business, 9 times out of 10, you don't have this structure that you're used to at corporate, right? You don't have an IT department. No. I learned how to network an office, and I clearly am not an IT person.
Oh my gosh,
Just ask Mike, our producer. But at the end of the day, right, you end up learning all these different skills if you embrace it. But you have to understand it's you. It's maybe your business partner. In my case, the best business partner ever. But
Thank you.
we didn't know certain things. And so you have to study. You have to invest in yourself. And where I'm going is it
Yes.
it's one thing to have business acumen. It's another to constantly be able to grow yourself. So I know that's a big point for you, because I think when
Yes.
we really started down this journey, that is really when you started really delving even more into personal development, your personal health, every aspect. And from corporate, you get to go in and you don't have some of the same stresses. You have different stresses, right?
Well, and they pay for your courses, right?
Right.
I mean, they pay for everything we did, leadership courses. We didn't take them serious. I didn't take them as serious as because it didn't matter. You will go back, you try them, right? And and unfortunately, the culture itself was so different that whatever they were teaching you was no longer applicable.
Right.
Right. And so, but you didn't have to worry about that, right? You just have to attend to those courses, and, and they pay for them. When you're become an entrepreneur, you have to invest in your growth.
Right.
It is not an option.
Right.
It is not, there's not a shortcut to that, because it's important. And you have to hire a coach that is going to be a good fit for you. And mindset plays a massive role in the transition, because they're different mindsets. It goes from a fixed mindset to a very adaptable mindset, right? A growth mindset. So we learned it the hard way. Failure is okay. That's another thing that, most entrepreneurs do not like failure. Who does like failure? Do you like failure?
No. For two reasons.
What's that?
One, I don't like it. And two, you don't like it. And then you make me sure I know that you don't like it.
That's true. Well, but failure is actually, you should embrace failure.
Totally.
Because it's inevitable.
In some shape, form, or fashion.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
It doesn't mean you're going to have this massive bomb, but you should. I mean, you're not going to make every decision correctly.
But it's like you said, you're not going to, we had everything you touch is not going to turn into gold.
Correct.
Everything I touch, it turns into gold, by the way.
Absolutely.
It has.
From my pocket to your pocket. But anyway, so lastly, I think that's a really good point, that we spent a lot of time, energy, and we really invested. And I think that's the thing that, when you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, you have to invest not only in your business, but you invest in yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's where growth comes in both. And you have to be willing to make those investments in order to really position yourself not only on a day-to-day basis, but a longevity perspective.
Right. There's also, there's a lot of resources out there. There's YouTube, there's Instagram. Everybody's an expert on Instagram. There's TikTok. I wouldn't recommend it, but hey. But whatever works that is going to at least pique your interest and get you curious. I think that's important as well.
I totally do. So I think what we're trying to get across to you guys today is in the initial stages of transitioning from corporate to entrepreneurship or business ownership, what you have to do is first understand that you need to have a plan of identifying things that you want to be involved in. Mm-hmm. You have to get past the self-doubt. And one thing I should have said earlier is you got to get past the people doubting you, because they'll say, why would you want to do that? Mm-hmm. You had a good job, or you can get a job just like you had. And in some industries you can, in some industries you can't. The next thing you have to do is you have to be, seriously sitting down and looking at things from a perspective of a problem that you're experiencing or somebody that is experiencing, and being aware of how you might solve that, and then validating it, right?
Right.
And then, from there, if you find it, now you have to say, I'm going to actually go in and I'm going to invest in it. But my whole point and the initial part was, you don't have to validate a business concept by investing a lot of money. You can do it for really almost nothing, right? Mm-hmm. It's the question is, do you have a solution that somebody will pay you for? And if you're creating a product versus a service, or even if it's a service, can you get someone to give you a pre-order or a retainer for that service before you even launch?
Right.
Because if you get 2 to 3 people to do that, and you don't even have a product or a service to deliver yet, you have a business. Mm-hmm. Now it's creating the model that will actually help it, right? And then you don't do that to a lot of people because you want to deliver the product, you want to create it, and then you have to find your ways. But you don't have to start a business with investing thousands and thousands of dollars to just validate the idea.
Yeah, and another thing that, I say a lot to some of my clients that most people don't understand, there's a lot of comparison out there. Right. Mm-hmm. And what I want to leave this episode with is with the following. Your middle doesn't have to be my middle. Let's just say my middle, you cannot compare it to your beginning. And that is very important to understand. Everybody that is in business today starts with 0. It is a beginner. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it is from corporate to entrepreneurship, from leadership, from a middle manager to an executive. It just does not matter where you are in your life. Do not compare your beginning to someone else's middle. That is something that I really want to emphasize, because we didn't have a lot of that when we started in business. We didn't have anything to compare it to. All we knew was that we wanted to be the very best in the industry, not the biggest. And now everything is different. Now everybody's looking at everyone in social media and, where those individuals are in their journey is a totally different ballgame. You can't compare that.
It's a phenomenal point. And you can see, even when you are doing well, it's natural to look, to aspire to be. But to what you're saying is so on point because, and you're right, we really didn't have that because, one, our network wasn't such that we were seeing that. Now we see it more, but now we're very comfortable with, well, yeah, but they've been doing that business for longer. Or maybe that business just does better, right? And it's, it's okay. Maybe that person just has different skills and they make more, right? It doesn't, you're absolutely right. That's why that comfort number is so important, because if you hit your comfort number and then you just adjust your comfort number, and now you're succeeding at every level that you want to be at. And if you want to act, and I'm just going to give this. So if you started like you did, I just want to replace my income. Well, now look at it. It's replaced our incomes. It's replaced them multiple times over.
Well, it's that. And it also, we've created opportunities for others.
Correct.
Through the process. I mean, our vendors.
Yes.
Right? Our employees. Us. I mean, we've created jobs.
Right. And I think that, again, it's just that whole comparison thing is really only going to give you doubt, right?
Yes.
Because if you start looking at it, and you were having a conversation that I was not a part, but I was overhearing, and the first thing is they said, well, I want to be like you. Well, you can aspire to be me, but I'm almost 17 years into this journey, right?
Yes.
So if you can get there in 2 years, God love you, but you can't expect it to happen overnight. It should be an aspiration, not a comparison.
Right. And it's progress, right? As long as you're making progress every day, I think that's the focus, right? Make progress, do something every day that moves the needle, that is going to make a difference in what you're trying to accomplish, rather than spending time scrolling on Instagram to make a comparison of the people that have been on Instagram for years. Same thing with the followers. It's the same exact thing. I am not an Instagrammer. So I am not going to expect to have 1 million followers. Do I want 1 million followers? Why? No, that's just not my desire.
Well, it's not your goal.
It's not my goal at all.
If it happens, that would be great.
Amazing. But I like to know people. So,
of course. So I think, though, so we can wrap this episode up, just to give you a segue to that. That was just giving you guys a little insight how we looked at starting our business. Some of the things that we shared, as Madeline said, where she was really vulnerable on the one, but also a little bit of our process and the way our mind works in it. Now, in the next couple episodes, as I said, we're going to now take that down the path of how did we really make choices of doing something from scratch versus a franchise.
Just diversification of our businesses.
Our transition to a more of a passive income strategy along with our businesses, and then really diving deep into the franchise model.
Yes.
Where we're going to break out, these are things, the pros and cons of the two scratch franchise. Then if you're moving towards franchise, what should you look for? Then if you find out from there, what things should you be analyzing in the FDD? And then we may just have some special guests that we want you to meet. And from there, I think we're going to help you see the path to entrepreneurship and business ownership is not difficult when you use your skills from your corporate world and then continue to grow the skills that you weren't a specialist in. So, Madeline, thank you so much for this conversation. I love just ripping it, right? And that's what we call it. I mean, you probably noticed there were no notes. I know I'm holding a piece of paper, but I never looked at a note. And we really didn't practice this, but we are here for you guys, and we are so excited and appreciate you joining us. If you like this, please hit the little button that says you liked it and subscribe. And if you know somebody that this next sequence of content is really going to be interesting in, please have them check us out. You know we publish and push it out every Wednesday now. And then obviously we put our shorts out there. But if you guys have questions, and if you have a specific question, and maybe you're thinking about transitioning from corporate, or maybe you've launched a business and you're at that euphoric stage is kind of winding down, reach out to us at questions@trustedpreneurs.com, or send us a note in whatever platform you're checking out the podcast or the show on. And until the next time, we appreciate you, and we look forward to talking to you again. Thanks.